Welcome, everyone, and good evening, and welcome to Conversations with Educators. Today, I am your moderator. My name is Dr. Miranda Bisu, and I am so welcomed and I'm so honored to be here today. Today, for our Conversation with Educators, we have 7 panelists, each with their own educational story, their background, their professional experiences, and we are excited for you to share your story and have your voice heard with regard to today's educational climate. Before we begin though, and you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your educational background and your experiences, I would like to acknowledge our sponsor for today's event. Today's event is being sponsored by Phyllis Harvey-Hall, the U.S. Democratic nominee for U.S. Congressional District 2. Phyllis, do you mind sharing with us a few thoughts and giving us a focus for today's event?
Greetings, everyone. I am Phyllis Harvey-Hall. Greetings. I am Phyllis Harvey-Hall, and I would like to say thank you to each of you as panelists and to our moderator, Miranda Bisu. I would really appreciate what you're doing, and I know that each panelist is dedicated to our profession. And thank you for doing what educators do all over this country and what all of us are known for doing, which is making a sacrifice for our students and for our profession. Because we believe and we know that we are imparting to the future. We know what's important, and we know that the legacy we leave with students matter. And as our moderator just said, I am running for US Congress. And I'm running because I know that education is that one great equalizer that really makes a change for everyone's socioeconomic status. I know that if we change education, we're changing our world. We are developing minds, and teachers know that we send everyone into the future. And we want to send them with the skill set, we want to send them with the values that will help change in our country and make it all live up to the values that we said. I sponsored this conversation because as an educator who spent 25 years in Montgomery County, I know that many educators go, they do their jobs, and they're working beyond the hours that many think that we put in, that we give over and over of our finances, our resources, and our time. And we don't ask much for that. So I want us as educators to move forward, knowing that we have a sense of agency. And in that sense of agency, we must start demanding that policies, talks involve us, the practitioners of our field. And so that's the reason I invited all of you to be here, and we're sponsoring this event. Thank you. And I want us to follow up this with us being empowered and us taking this conversation to every level of the administration and our government so that we have a voice, because we know what's best for our children as we move forward in this unprecedented time. Thank you so much again for participating, and I look forward to working with you further.
Thank you, Phyllis Harvey-Hall, for that. Now, as we head into our actual conversation, I would like for each one of you to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your background, your experiences in education, and as we go about this, if you don't mind, when you're not speaking, to mute yourself and then unmute when you decide to share a thought. So who would like to go first? Just whoever would like to. I encourage this to be as informal as possible.
I'll go. Oh. Jacqueline, were you trying to go?
I was, but I'm going to defer to you.
Okay. My name is Veronica R. Johnson, and I'm a little unique to the situation, as in I am an educator, but my full-time job is in the juvenile justice system, where I have been for the past 15 years. My part-time job, however, is adjunct professor, and I've been an adjunct professor at 2 HBCUs in the state for the past 7 years. So although I am not a formal educator, as in that's when I went to school for, that is something that I enjoy doing thoroughly.
Well, greetings. My name is Jacqueline Campbell. I'm actually entering my 25th year as a public educator. I'm currently employed in Montgomery Public Schools. My history for as experience, I started out as an elementary teacher in Lowndes County. I transferred to Montgomery County, where I have served in multiple capacities to include classroom teacher, lead teacher, assistant principal, principal, and currently I'm a central office employee where I serve as executive director for curriculum and instruction. So all of my experience has been in public schools, and I must say it has been rewarding because I've had an opportunity to work with students who struggle, at-risk students, as often referred to, but I've also worked in schools where we have a high performance, which has been the magnet school. So I have a wealth of experience as it relates to the various levels of learners in the educational process.
Stephen?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Christopher Walker. I would like to say that I'm a two-time graduate of the Alabama State University. I'm currently an educator at the Montgomery Public School System. I actually began in MPS back in 2010, and I've been an educator going on 10 years. That includes being a classroom teacher, 5th and 6th grade. I've also taught at a behavioral treatment facility before. I'm currently the district technology instructor, or one of the district technology instructors of the Montgomery Public School System. I've also been an assistant principal as well. And I've had the opportunity to get to know the personalities of a lot of parents, teachers, and children. And I think that's the best part about our jobs. We're able to have those relationships and build those relationships for the betterment of the community and our schools.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me. My name's B.A. Dunnigan. I started my career as a Montgomery Public Schools educator and taught in Montgomery Public Schools for 3 years taught 11th grade history and spent a lot of time learning from the Montgomery community and moved into the nonprofit sector. So doing more community education. I've done community education and financial literacy, food systems work, work that impacts directly the schools. And currently I'm working in a career development nonprofit that gives career development to students 18 to 26. I'm currently in Southern California, but I always feel like Montgomery is the space and Alabama is the space that really raised my professional career and my passion for education and our young people. So excited to be here.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Benjamin Brown. I'm currently an assistant principal at Capitol Heights Middle School in Montgomery, Alabama. And I have a little over 16 years of experience teaching in predominantly low-income Title I African-American schools. I have a unique background of being educated at Auburn University, as well as the Alabama State University, where I was very fortunate to earn my PhD. And I do have a lot of scholarly research interest that's motivated by my background in teaching. And I look forward to learning more and more so that hopefully in the future I can contribute more opportunities toward young people, especially those who encounter a lot of barriers. Thank you for having me.
And thank you each for being here. So we're going to head straight into the topic of today. And I'm sorry, but we have one panelist that's joining us that had a bit of a technical difficulty logging on. Susan, are you there? Hey, Susan, we can see you. Yay. Thank you for joining us, and we're glad you were able to resolve the technical difficulty you were having. Can you hear me? Well, we can't hear Susan and Susan cannot hear us, but we will continue with our conversation. So here's what I wanted to start off today with. We know that in today's current educational climate, there is one thing that has happened that we could not necessarily anticipate, right? So it was very something that happened that was unpredictable, the COVID-19 pandemic, that has forced us to look at our educational landscape and forced us to rethink education. And this may have an impact, it will have an impact for how education moves forward in the future. Can you share with us a few thoughts about your initial thoughts when school basically went remote the first time around, and what are your thoughts about the future of education with regard to this pandemic and long and short-term implications, and really what this means for children and for educators? Because I always think of it this way. At the forefront of everything we do is the learner, the students, and then the people who help the students, the teachers, the educators, and then always surrounding that and embracing that would be the parents. And I know that was a very long question, guys, I'm sorry, but just your thoughts.
As one of the technology instructors for the district, I can really say that this has been one of the key shifts that have happened in history. It's all about being able to get our children ready to use the technology. Our teachers do a wonderful job at preparing them to do that. And we also prepare the parents as well. And I think it's important that we stay up with the times. That way we can always be ready for this when something happens. And I think we're doing an excellent job. But it's very important to be able to know how to use that technology and how to integrate it as well. Much of what I do is all about the integration of technology and giving teachers the tools to integrate that with the students. So hopefully that mixed in with the professional development will give them opportunity to make our students successful and assist parents as well in the best way that we can. The only thing constant is change, and COVID definitely allowed us to experience that.
And for me, as a parent and an educator, well, in one of the programs that I taught in, we had a blended classroom anyway. Again, I teach on the collegiate level, so it would always be 1 week in person, 1 week online. So it wasn't a big switch. We just switched to doing totally online to finish out our semester. So my classroom, since teaching at in that particular setting, it wasn't a traditional setting. So that was new for me in and of itself. As a parent, it was different. I have an 8-year-old and I have a 16-year-old in a very interesting scenario. The 8-year-old, we had to learn how to do creative things with her. And this is from the parenting aspect. So her teachers would send assignments home, but they weren't holding my baby's attention. Y'all, we grew a garden. We started a business. Like, I'm just like, hey, we're going to have to find something else to do because this isn't really working for me. One of us going to end up getting hurt. Let's find out something else to do. So in the midst of us growing the garden, we grew the garden. They had to do an Earth Day project. So we were able to correlate how the garden would help with the Earth Day project. So we have science, then, we looped it in so many different ways. And then we had the chart to determine how much the fruits and vegetables grew in, that period of time. So we were able to loop it in that way. Although we had assignments that we were supposed to do, it really wasn't working for us. So I just had to find a innovative way to to educate her. My 16-year-old, on the other hand, apparently he's familiar with State Board of Education, and he realized that whatever grades he got the previous 9 weeks was going to be the same grades he got the next 9 weeks. And so he did just the bare minimum. He logged in, he saw if his teachers had put anything out there. Maybe he did it, maybe he didn't. But that's my only gripe about that. And he takes AP classes. So I couldn't be like, well, hey, let me come up with an assignment for you. It was just like.
So we're seeing an intertwine of school life and work life. We've been seeing this coming a little bit, right, with technology and how it's been integrated into students' everyday life, parents' everyday life. It's quite interesting. And I think the emerging literature that we'll see from this whole event will probably show a need for everyone having access to broadband and some digital device, but also a need to think about work and the curriculum a little bit differently for our students. We do have Susan with us, and I think Susan can hear us.
I can. Can y'all hear me? Okay, so sorry.
Susan, if you wouldn't mind just giving us just a brief introduction to your background, your educational expertise, and then we'll continue with this question a little bit more.
And I do apologize for coming in late, technical difficulties. My name is Susan Clark. This is my 27th year in the Montgomery County Public School System. I have a master's in an MED from AUM in early childhood. I have taught in 4 different schools here in Montgomery. Currently, I'm doing my dream job right now at a magnet school here, and I'm teaching 2nd grade science, math, and social studies. And I had the privilege of teaching with Dr. Bisu and Ms. Hall when we were all at Head Elementary. So
yes, we did. So the current, and thank you for being here, Susan. The question in front of us right now is, how has COVID-19 changed the current educational landscape, and how do you see that changing the landscape in the future and impacting us currently and in the future as well? Anyone else has any secondary or other thoughts to share with us?
Sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay, go ahead. Okay. Okay, it's always hard with Zoom. Yeah, so I think I'm thinking a lot about the inequities that we see in our different school systems and the way that this pandemic has played into that inequity in our most vulnerable communities. And so when I think about the way that COVID is going to impact, in a hopeful space, I would love for it to be about innovation and creativity and all of those things. But in a reality check space, I know that my students never had the amount of resources that they needed, that they were deserving of. And we're talking about students who already have a lot of trauma in their lives, from whether it be like poverty or, having family members incarcerated, or just all of the other inequities that come with the systemic injustices in our country. So I think about this pandemic, and I think that gap in what I refer to as education debt is just going to get deeper. And I believe that, we were already in a space of our most vulnerable students not just kind of surviving, not even thriving in an educational space all the time. And I fear that this will only worsen that. On the flip side, my hope is that this time would actually give us space to reimagine and rethink education altogether. I question, why are we even talking about going back to school right now, instead of just thinking about how can we best support students, not how can we best teach them math or English right now, but like what can we do to provide resources and support to them in the middle of a pandemic, on top of all the other trauma that's going on. So I think that's where my mind goes. I know that's a little more big picture, but and then going back to kind of that like technology question, I think like when I was teaching most recently, a little over a year ago, my students, we shared 27 kind of mostly working laptop computers with 8 teachers in our classes. And I had about 170 students on my roster, right? So you think about that impact of how can we expect the technological systems to be available in systems that have very low funding and aren't always equipped with what they need to meet students where they are.
Well, coincidentally, I would actually like to tag on. I kind of had the same thought process as BA. And our students already, especially at my particular school, and even when I taught the magnet schools, they have a surprisingly amount of barriers, especially in Montgomery and some of the more urban areas. So I know I'm working closely with Stephen, and I know he's tired of me contacting him all the time to make sure we're not going to have technology issues and supporting our students. But that is another barrier that our students may face, and they have a lot to overcome. And so I know for me, what can I do to ensure that the students are well supported, the faculty is well supported, so that they don't become more apathetic or falsely apathetic toward the needs of these students. I know it's easy to give up on them sometimes, but if you push a little harder, they'll work with you. And so, right. So it's just an issue of what more barriers are we going to have to overcome, and how much more can we support our students so that they can be even more successful.
I think both of you bring up a very good point of, as we reimagine what education could look like in the future, we're also reimagining those barriers as well. And I work with research a lot, and developing educational research, and it's come to the attention that we've had so much of late being talked about with social emotional health, and how this may contribute to the additional anxiety that students feel. And now it's not just surrounding school, but it's added to life anxiety, right? And how not only our students deal with this, but how our parents deal with this too. And do our parents have the skill to help students in this type of way? Parents are parents, they do a great job, but teachers are educators with a specific set of skills, and we know about the cognitive development of our students, the affective domain. We're guided, we're taught how our students develop and grow and mature. And we take precautions, or we take steps to help foster that in the classroom. And it's now about, how do we foster that in a virtual environment? And it is causing us to think a little bit differently. And I want our parents to know we're not there 100%, but it doesn't mean that we're not striving or trying to be there with that. We have a couple of questions for our panelists relating to this topic a little bit. We have Tracy Davis, who agrees that innovation is the key. And we do have a question: how do you help parents use the technology in an instructional way for their students, to help their students with the work? I know Stephen is our technology guru here, but I would like for everyone to kind of chime in as well. But Stephen, I'm going to lead off to you first.
I think one of the most important ways that we can effectively assist our parents is making sure they have what they need. And I use, for example, even with non-speaking English parents, or parents that may have those language barriers, what we personally do is create those instructions that we hand out in different languages so everybody can understand. We try to make it very readable. We try to support them by giving them things that are easier to use. And Ms. Johnson, I definitely feel your pain, and I hear your pain, and I do understand. So that's one way that we can try to help kind of destroy that barrier of what's making it difficult for that. We need to make sure parents have everything they need, and as easy as possible to translate it, to make sure their child can use the Chromebooks, that they can actually complete their assignments.
One thing I want to say, going back to the original question, in my current position, it is very cringing as we prepare curriculum documents and support for teachers to implement to schools. And as we know with our current situation, is that it's no longer business as usual. We have to find ways to truly make a difference in supporting teachers in their delivery of instruction to students, as well as our parents. And as everyone was talking, the thing that I thought most about is the social emotional needs. And as it has already been stated, it's not just the students, it is the adults, not just the adults the teachers who have to come back to the schools, but it's everyone, even at central office level, because what's going on in our society with COVID-19, anxiety has increased. It too will impact the performance and what's going on in the schools. But as I think about the future and what is going to occur, I see this leading to more remote learning. And I also see the gap that currently exists with our students who struggle, becoming wider and wider. I see where literacy is a problem throughout the nation, and more specifically in the city of Montgomery. And if we do not find a way in which we can truly provide those early literacy skills to our students, I am afraid to think of what our future is going to look like. So I do think it's going to be very important that we become more active with policy and advocating for education for all of our students.
And I'm glad you spoke a little bit about advocacy, because I think we have someone on here that does a lot with community, right? B.A. Donegan, you mentioned. So think about that in this climate and in education in general. We always know that we have a third party. We have stakeholders, and we have those educational community stakeholders that sometimes we don't lean on as much as we need to, or involve as much as we need to in the educational process. What are some things you guys think about of a way to tap into some of the resources the community has for us from educational stakeholders in the community? I know that's just a throw out question.
I'm not sure if this is an answer to your question, but one of the things that I am seeing in the classroom, in the schools in general, is we need to reconfigure the way we deal with mental health issues. And the reason I bring this up here is that a lot of the time, the mental health issues, I have seen more extreme behaviors in the classroom the last 5 years than I have in previous years. And it's real easy to say, well, that's just bad parenting, but it's not, because a lot of times the parents are having to deal with, their own issues, and it's hard to, they're overwhelmed, And I think we as a community, we have to do something to help these parents out. Parents are dealing with alcoholism, drug use, divorce, working 3 jobs, and we need to do something. We need to do a complete overhaul, I think, of the way we handle mental health issues in throughout the nation, actually. So like I say, I'm not sure if that's an answer to your question, but something needs to be done. We've really got to be advocates for parents as well as the children.
I think it is a kind of an answer, because we can intentionally reach out to our community partners that specialize in that area and say, how can you provide services even remotely for our students and for our parents? What can you do? Can we host little groups where we have parent mentoring groups, right? Like the Parent Project. We've heard about the Parent Project, where we make sure that parents are equipped with the skills for parenting and how they go about doing or practicing parenting, good parenting skills. And so we can still continue some of those things. It's just about structuring it, setting it up, making it accessible to those who need it. And then that becomes the issue, right? Identifying those in need, how we go about, because sometimes people don't self-report. We have a hard time because of the stigma associated with mental health concerns that people don't self-report. We don't self-identify. Hey, I'm struggling right now. I need some help. I mean, I'll be the first one to say, this last month working from home remotely, I love my job, but y'all, the 4 walls were closing in. Like one day I had to get out of my house in my car, took my laptop to the park, and I did work at the park for a couple of hours, as long as my laptop was able to stay, to allow me to. And I felt 100% better because I wasn't in a house with the walls closing in on me. So I think it's sometimes just sharing those strategies or tips with parents as well, intentionally, in an intentional way, to bring it to the forefront. Any last thoughts on that from anyone?
I would be, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I would be remiss not to bring up the services of HIPPY. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with HIPPY, but they're based in MPS. We do have a HIPPY program that helps assist parents with those younger age children to give them more of a foundation, to give them some extra help. I think it'd be a great resource to utilize as well. They have spots that are able to help parents. They're able to help, give clothes, do things of that nature to just basically make it easier for them to help educate the students. So HIPPY is definitely an option that can be utilized in addition to everything else that we're talking about tonight.
I have really enjoyed listening to the concerns that have been mentioned. And I listened to Dr. Campbell mention that how we are going to face even a greater educational gap. And I've heard you, B.A. Donegan, say the same. And as someone, I don't want to control this conversation, but I got into this race because I know that we need educators at the forefront of policy decisions. We need to be in when they are crafting policy and when there's legislation going forward. We make up America. We teach America. We bring such credentials to our country and to our youth. And yet in every profession, almost except outside of ours, the people on the inside, as those of us that worked at HEAD used to call, we are the front line for education. But most of the time, we are not invited into the policy decisions. And that is what I've been an advocate for since day one when I entered education, that if we are the practitioners, we should be the policymakers. We should have input at every phase of policy. And I see here we have so many people already in administration and have worked in various components in education. This panel is America. This panel should be talking in every room where we are crafting policy. As we have talked about COVID-19, we're looking at what you have said, Mr. Walker, that we do need the technology. You're doing what you can do, but we're leaving out something that I think is going to be critical for one of the reasons. Where is the funding? We need the resources. And as I've heard everyone say, teachers, we know we give, but if we want to make our children be able to compete in a global society, we have to put some money, as we say, put some skin in this game and put funding, and that's resources of time. And we must put those in who are capable of dealing with some of the challenges of today's youth. I've heard all of us talk about the socio-emotional, the patterns they are dealing with, their social health, their emotional health. That means that we need people who are trained to be inside of our schools. So we need resources, and that includes personnel trained to help us in this tremendous project that we have of raising the next generation of thinkers and putting forth those new thinkers in a 21st century where they can compete globally. So I'm here because I want to take what you're saying and make certain that you're coming along with me as educators. I want us to develop that sense of agency, continue these conversations, but not just have the conversation, but then let's get us to do a list of actions that we want to see implemented. And let's stand united, because we are force if we stand and we fight and advocate for our youth. And I want to share one thing and get off this. I was talking to my niece. My niece is, she's working on her PhD in psychology. My nephew is an educator. And I was talking to them about what we're facing with COVID-19. And I said, well, you are able to teach your child. And I said, there are parents who might not have a skill set. And she looked at me and she said, Auntie, but where do we get the time? I work a job that has called me back. My husband is now going back into a school system. He's called back. She's like, who's going to teach him? And I literally have not really thought about that answer. Well, I can give her an answer yet. I've been thinking about it. And I've heard Veronica talk about her children. We have parents who don't have those skill sets. And we've got to think about how we can get community stakeholders, as I heard Dr. Bisu say. And that is something we must put together our collective hats and figure out how can we serve these parents, because children will lose that educational gap. And we need to be thinking about how we can put together a plan to move forward for these next 9 weeks. And I stop there. And if you all have an answer for me for my niece, I'm open, because she caught me unprepared for that.
I don't have an answer for your niece, but I do have an answer as to where we're going to get the money from. And I hate to get off on my soapbox, but this is most definitely one of my soapbox, y'all. And y'all know where all our money is? Down in the Alabama Department of Corrections. If they'll take that money, just take that money, take the money. Of course, we know we have the Education Trust Fund, then we have Medicaid, we have the prison system. That's come out of the general fund budget. Then we have the Education Trust Fund. That's a whole nother bucket of money. I don't understand why they have to give the prison so much of our children money. If they will take that money and reinvest that money into our babies, then we will be fine. We will be perfectly fine. If they will get our pre-K program up to 100% capacity for the entire state, we will be fine. We will have no need to worry about how we will be taken care of just by us starting those kids in school 1 year earlier. 1 year earlier. It's going to boost the economy. And as a result, we don't have to worry about our Social Security. We don't have to worry about our pensions, because guess what? We paid for it on the front end by sending them to school 1 year earlier, just 1 year. So I say, and Ms. Harvey-Hall made an excellent point. The people who are making the choices and decisions that affect us every day don't look like us. They don't work in a regular setting every day. Most of those people come from money. Most of them. Now, there are some regular people there, but most of them come from money. And most of them have never experienced the type of conditions that children growing up in an impoverished area have. So they don't understand. They don't understand why free lunch is important. They don't understand why we need hot spots. They don't understand why when school shut down in March, we should have sent devices home with each and every last one of those kids, because the cell phone just not gonna cut it. So again, back to what you said, the money is there, but instead of them investing it into our babies, they want to build 3 new prisons. Go figure. Either they're going to put our children in school on the front end, or put them in the Alabama Department of Corrections on the back end. Either way, they suffer.
I saw a table where throughout the United States, more is spent on inmates than on children in elementary schools. The states spend more money on inmates than the children, school children. And just think if it were the exact opposite, with the child starting out, he may not, if we spent what we spend on the inmate, on the child, he wouldn't end up there. There's always been this old adage, or she wouldn't end up there. There's always been this old adage, pay now or pay later. We've got to invest in their lives from the start. And, I'm not an expert on criminal law or any of that, but it just makes sense to choose the people who value education, put them in the offices, and make sure that our children get what they need.
I'd love to
Be able to.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no.
May be able to speak to this. I know you mentioned that you worked in educational research and development, but if you notice, 3rd grade has always been the emphasis. Whether or not students are able to read by the time they finish 3rd grade will determine whether or not they will increase those skills. It has also been stated that that data is also used to build prisons. That goes back to my early statement about literacy and the gap that is occurring. I agree wholeheartedly. The earlier we can get our students, those first 5 years of their life is crucial to the foundation and for them to be successful in acquiring those necessary skills. So I do think a lot of people are not aware of what decisions are made when prisons are being built, what data, and the importance of education and that data to determine how that money is used.
I'd love to speak to this as well. I think, especially thinking about just the way that schools operate in contributing to incarceration and the school to prison pipeline, I think that's incredibly evident in our school system in Montgomery. And when we think about our practices, our procedures, and our rules, they're very punitive, and everything's about punishment, right? And I think when we're talking about a student population that has a lot of trauma and, again, like systemic inequity that they're building on a daily basis, we have to bring in a collective healing. So going back to Ms. Harvey-Hall's conversation about like what are policy changes that have to happen, I think we're uniquely positioned right now where there's this great movement happening in our country that is truly trying to abolish punitive systems and reallocate those resources. And I think that it is an opportunity for education policy folks and those of us that are in those spaces to truly step forward and say, we're actually gonna build with this movement intersectionally and say, like, this is all connected, to bring that power into the movement even further and impact our students. The other piece I wanted to speak to briefly, because I know we've spoken about it a little bit with parents having to sort of like take on a new role as also teacher on top of parenting and all these other things. I think when we think about the COVID pandemic, we have to remember that our students that are in vulnerable communities are often have parents who are deemed essential workers. And so whereas our affluent communities, those parents get to work from home and can sort of manage, you know, the students and all those things. Our vulnerable populations tend to have, you know, parents having to go back to work. And I think that is a huge piece of this conversation that we're not including in this. And then, like, what do educators do to build into policy? I think first and foremost is incorporating it into your curriculum. I believe personally that our students are our greatest moral compass. I think that they have been tainted the least by the systems and the powers that be in their young age, and they really do understand justice in a way that, you know, we have to unlearn the things that they haven't learned quite yet. And I think that is an opportunity to bring that into our classroom and allow them to be those moral leaders, and we can facilitate them into those spaces, and their voices are so powerful no matter what age they are. And I do also believe that empowers them to use the energy of all of these things that are happening to them, and instead be able to take that and say, I'm actually going to make a difference, and I'm going to be in these spaces. I'm going to push into the school board meetings, or I'm going to, you know, what have you. Or as a teacher, I'm going to run for office, and I'm going to go make these policies while operating out of the classroom, because there is no standard for what it means to be a politician. There's no, you don't have to go to school, you don't have to know anything. That's not how this works, right? But I think that's what holds us back from becoming politically engaged, is we think you have to have some kind of resume or like master's in policy, and that's just not true, because you have children, you have students you value, and that's really all the resume you need to stand up and make your way in those spaces.
So that really leads us to our, you know, the question I wanted to wrap up with. We've had a good conversation. We've touched on social emotional learning. We've talked about inequities in education. I wish we had talked about inequities a little bit more, because I think you're right in that in this situation, we're seeing those inequities play out more so, because we're seeing in rural communities where students don't have access to broadband, how that's impacting their education. Students who don't have access to a one-to-one device, how that's impacting them. We're seeing more so that when your innate characteristics, whether your race, your ethnicity becomes a predictor of your success. We know that's the pure definition of being a system that's inequitable, and how more so those barriers can be more prevalent in this environment if we don't take intentional steps to minimize them. And you touched a little bit on what we do, what's our next steps. So yes, we had a great conversation, but if it ends here, we're still at ground zero. We're still at the beginning, you know, and we're here today, and you brought up teachers can do it. Why not? There's not a standard to be a politician. I don't have the desire to personally be a competition. That's not my desire. But I can support individuals I know who has that drive, that compassion, that integrity, and has not lost the moral compass that our children have, to go to Congress and to say, this is wrong and we need to do better. Because when third grade literacy is a predictor of the number or the capacity, the number of individuals we have in jail, guys, stop and think about that. That's heartbreaking for me. And it's heartbreaking because we're teachers. When we talk about children, I see faces. I see faces. I don't see numbers, I see faces. I see little ones, and I can name off the little ones, right? And so how important it is to break that that school to prison pipeline. So what can we do? We can support those who are trying, but outside of that, how can teachers become advocates in this climate or in any climate? What can we do?
Coming from the school system, I want to make sure that we do our job to make sure that the teachers can be those advocates. I want to make sure that we effectively are able to give the parents what they need, give the teachers what they need, give the students what they need. At the end of the day, it is about the child. And if we're not equipping them to the best of our ability, then you're going to have those gaps. My thoughts more towards making sure that the school system does what they're supposed to do as far as even devices, giving those out, making sure that people have what they need to be successful. I think it's accountability that comes along with that. And we have to hold ourselves accountable to make sure that we're doing the best we can to support the best we can.
I like that you brought that up, accountability. So what I heard was those in charge need to be held accountable. How do we hold them accountable? We've got to keep voicing. We've got to keep, emailing, reaching out. We have to be heard. Like, for example, Veronica, I would like to see the budget. Right? Can we, I would like to see the budget.
It's there, Miranda. You don't want to see it.
I've looked at some of it and it is appalling. Yes. But past being appalled, what else can I do? It's like, do we reach out to our legislatures, our state legislatures, our House of Representative legislatures? Do we, tell them, we've put you in these positions for the common good of all people. And if you can't do something for the common good of all people, okay, I'm going to see you at the ballot box.
And I'll add this to what you're saying, Miranda. We live in Alabama, in which the inner cities of Alabama, of course, are predominantly Black. But we have a legislative body that is predominantly white, male, and Republican. Again, none of them have experienced anything any of us have ever experienced. None of them have ever seen what we have seen. None of them can relate to what we have going on. So I've always heard this example. In most white homes, a saucer and a cup, a saucer goes on a teacup. In Black home, a saucer is a small plate that you eat out of. Two totally different concepts. Nothing's wrong with either one of them. But that's how the world is viewed. That's how it is. And as long as it's like that, it's going to always make it difficult because we don't understand one another.
And I just want to vote them out is what I want to do. I want people who truly understand. And what I want is for all these people who make these grand gestures and come up with these policies that have never been inside a classroom. I want them to go to their district, go to their schools, spend a day in a school, and don't tell anybody you're coming, because we will. I'm in the classroom. We will put on a dog and pony show if we know you're coming, Just show up, and don't even go to your favorite school. Go to the school in your district that's struggling the most and see what's going on before you even open your mouth to make a policy. go and see. I have tried calling legislators, and I will be lied to, basically. They'll tell me one thing, but then something else happens. They'll vote the exact opposite way. And so I can't really trust them. And that's what we need. We need people out there on all government levels that we can trust.
And I come in here, Susan, and so many of you all, and Veronica, and the reason I am running is because I know educators, we must meet children and their families at a point of need. We teach every ethnic group. We see children from various socioeconomic backgrounds. And because we are the people that care for those children and their families, and we have learned to show the compassion, to not just talk and do the grandstanding, but because as educators, we have a heart for people. And we are concerned about the youth, which is our future. We should be the ones running for office. I heard you say, B.A. Dunnigan, that we don't need any credentials. I think we do. We need to know history. We need to understand things about development. We need to understand economics. And I've heard someone talk about financial literacy piece in here. All of that needs to be done. So we need us to be there because we help transform, and we are the ones that send the youth out into the future. So you do need us. You need us leading everybody forward. You need us at the forefront. And in our field, I look on this panel, I see everyone, I see every degree level in this panel. I see central office administration, school-based administration, and at various levels. I see California, I see us in deep red Alabama. So you have here the thoughts and the mindset of what we need in this country. And what I want us to do is be empowered to leave from this conversation saying that we want our children. We know that children, as Campbell said, we know that the earlier you put them in school, the better. We know that that learning is going to occur. And in Alabama, it does not need to be that we have to wait on you to send them at school at 6. Every child needs to be in preschool. We need to make certain it's there because that's where you start closing in the gap. The sooner they can learn, and as Dr. Campbell said, get the literacy skills that they need. That will be when we see our state changing, when we see our country changing. We know that ignorance is not bliss. So we want to train, we want to teach and make sure we're leading forward. Educators running. So I tell each of you, run, we're capable. We have the agency. Let's empower ourselves and not just listen to them when they give us one thing and they don't follow through. Call them and let them know we will vote them out. Mm-hmm. It is our turn to lead our country and to show our country the way to go with love, compassion, focusing on quality of life outcomes. And I think that's the importance here. And we all see that and we're concerned. So continue to call. Let's not be depressed about the current situation. Let's arm ourselves with knowledge and information and vote for what we see and what we know children and the future of America needs.
Thank you. I think we have to find a way and join these groups, these community groups that actually that intentionally seek out to change. Protest is good, guys. I've been to them myself, and I've tried to make some good trouble. Phyllis and I have tried to make some good trouble, and always we've done that ever since we were teachers, and we're trying to continue to do that. But I feel that teachers somehow we lose our sense of agency, our voice. I don't know where it comes from, where we feel like we can't get together and force the change that we know is good for our students. We have teachers is a lot, the teaching group is a large voting bloc. And sometimes I feel like we vote against our best self-interest. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's about bringing the issues and clearing it up for teachers, and getting the true nature of the issue out to the teachers, to that voting block, and letting them know, hey, you do this, this happens. If you vote this way, we have a potential. We know what we have if we keep doing the same things over and over again. We've had such a great conversation. I don't know if anyone has any last thoughts. And I know we're over time, but I want to thank each of you for taking the time to prepare for this and taking the time to be here today to share your thoughts. And I look forward to seeing what we do next. And I hope that if there's anything that anyone on this panel we can do for each other, let's reach out, keep in touch, and let's make some good trouble, guys, in honor of our great John Lewis. Y'all have a good one. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.